This is Anthony Pascal.
And this is Laurie Elster, and this is the All Access Star Trek podcast. We have 2 Lower Decks episodes to review this week, so we are not doing the news or the bits, but we will talk Star Trek as we always do.
There's plenty of Star Trek in 2 episodes of Lower Decks.
There sure is. So I think we should dive right in and start with episode 503, The Best Exotic Nanite Hotel.
Which was a fun visit. We went somewhere. We did something.
Yes, we went to a planet. There were some people.
Well, it wasn't a planet. It was a
cruise ship. It was a cruise ship.
It looked like a space station, but it was a cruise ship, and it was described as big as a moon, although it didn't really look as big as a moon. But whatever. It had all these different climate zones. It allowed different adventures because they split people up. So, you know, I don't know why they didn't just set it on a vacation planet, but whatever, you know, it was fine. And it was called, there was no joke there, or was there? It was called the Cosmic Duchess.
Oh, well, it's like the Pacific Princess from the Love Boat, right? Wasn't it called the Pacific Princess?
I guess. Was it? I don't know. I'm not a Love Boat guy.
I am shocked.
Now, of course, it's like once you think about this, you have to stop thinking about this because the previous episode was all about, hey, there's no money, you know? And now like Starfleet is sending them to a cruise ship that has casinos and people are charging drinks. And it's like, why is Starfleet sending them? Why is there money here? Okay, let's just, you know, and I started going down that rabbit hole. I'm like, oh, no.
Look, the money thing, they never have come up with a satisfactory answer for it in any of the Treks where they ever mentioned it. And they'd mention that there's no money, but then they'd mention money. So, you know, Lower Decks is just following in that tradition of not really making sense.
The whole Boimler thing is about an admiral who goes vacation, man. And it brings up this whole thing of like, how do you go on vacation when you're in Starfleet? Do they pay for your vacations? You know, or like, you know, because I've always wanted that explained, but maybe there's some humor there. But
right. I don't think it can be explained because nobody's ever been able to come up with something that actually makes sense. But we did see characters go on vacation in previous shows. People would go away for a week, come back. You know, Riker brought the game back from his vacation.
Exactly. But I'm saying, you know, how does that exactly work? How could you be AWOL? Like, are you in a contractual relationship with Starfleet?
That makes sense to me because, of course, no matter what, they go, here's when we need you to report back.
Yeah.
I mean, the same way they have duty shifts. You know, it's not like everybody just shows up whenever they want and then they don't do the tasks that they don't feel like doing.
Yeah. They get fined the non-existent money if they don't do their tasks. But this had a very distinct A and B story with basically the whole gang plus T'Lyn and Jennifer do, I guess, the A story, and then Boimler gets the B story, and then they get tied up at the end again. And so that's kind of a new pattern that they're doing. Perhaps.
Yep. And they packed in a lot into that short episode. Like there was so much going on. There was something for almost, you know, for the characters that appeared, there was something for everybody to do. And I just loved the pace of it, the frantic pace.
There was a lot of action in both stories, but especially with the Mariner storyline.
The Glumpus storyline.
This gets to your interview with Mike. We're not even going to explain what a nanite is. And in fact, I think the captain says it's a routine nanite infestation. It's like nanites. We all know what nanites are. We're not even going to explain them, you know, because we don't have time for that. You know, we're just going to move straight to studying and capturing the nanites. Although these nanites, I have to admit, like, why did because the whole thing about a nanites is they get everywhere. But these were very nice nanites. They stayed in one simple clump, Glumpus. But this whole, that whole storyline was really about, I think, fixing a problem with season 4, which is, and I think you and I talked about this, which is they just kind of forgot Jennifer existed.
Yes. Which I think Mike has talked about, right? How he said, everybody reminded me that we didn't really resolve that. And then I love that they just wrote it in that Mariner didn't resolve it and that she thought she broke up with silence.
Right. It was so obvious. You know. I mean, it did, like, you know, when she left the ship in season 3 and Jennifer didn't believe her.
Yeah.
So you could take that as a breakup for sure, but still, Jennifer like showed up in the background a couple times in season 4, I think, but never said a word. So now they finally dealt with it in a fun way.
No, in a very, very, very fun way. And I love that she was just messing with Mariner.
Yeah, I didn't see that. Like I thought this is weird, but then it made sense that was, that was how it was resolved. And it's another, it's yet another episode where the resolution is everyone needs to be honest with each other at the end. Like, yep. I wasn't telling you this secret or whatever, and then that's the resolution. And they quickly resolve it at the top of a palm tree hiding from Glompus. So those resolutions, those little let's all be honest with each other resolutions, they do those really fast on the show. They give you like 30 seconds to solve
and they keep the action going at the same time. They integrate it very well.
Interestingly, they decided this is going to be a big T'Lyn episode in that same storyline. Even though it was really a Mariner story, it was T'Lyn that saved the day, her whole thing with Krog. She had the most interesting insights into Mariner and Jennifer, the most cutting remarks. So I love how they're integrating her into the show.
I think it was T'Lyn who said, perhaps she has a brain parasite, and Tendy's like, no, I already checked.
Yeah. If you listen to our last week's episode, I interviewed her, and there's other elements of this episode that I feel like they wrote in because Gabrielle Ruiz voices the character, and they, so that the whole musical thing, because she's a musical person, and the Crazy Ex-Girlfriend thing, because she was on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
Right.
So the actual instrument was a super deep cut, the vibe tubes.
Yes. In your eggs article, you pointed out.
I didn't spot this, but Ian, who's a part of the team, spotted it. And it's just this weird, dumb looking instrument from We Always Have Paris from TNG that was like in the background in the cafe on the holodeck.
And I'll be honest, that's not an episode that I tend to rewatch.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't. So I haven't seen it in a long time. So even when I'm picking obscure ones, that one's not usually on my list.
That was one of the ways this episode added to the canon. Like, we know now know that instrument are called vibe tubes.
Right. Appropriately so.
And this guy Krog, who we don't have a name for the Krog species, but it's a lower deck species. Like they've used it a few times.
Yep.
He's a pretty cool guy. And like the people who ran the cruise ship are like the same race as Riker's first officer. So that they're building on their own canon more and more on this show.
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty of Easter eggs in this episode. I mean, read our article about the Easter eggs. They've got some obscure Star Trek. I mean, if you want obscure Star Trek races, they had the Galamites.
Yes. No, they had a couple of different races that we've sort of heard about and known fun facts about that they added. And they go back to their own history too, which is always fun. And then also reaching for things that have nothing to do with Star Trek.
Right. I mean, we haven't even gotten into the Boimler story, but before we get, as I was rewatching this episode, it was just occurring to me that it's so interesting how the show has evolved. So much of the humor of this episode is because we've watched the show. Like this, if you just watch this as your first episode of Lower Decks, it just wouldn't. I don't think it would work because like the whole Jennifer thing kind of relies on you. I feel like knowing who Jennifer is, and I think I disagree with you a little bit because you'd get it immediately. Like they spell it out. So if you hadn't, I think they would know that. And I also think once they separated Boimler and he had a different story, it was fun to throw Jennifer in there because Mariner needs a foil. Like she and Boimler are always sort of talking about their different approaches to things. And so Jennifer served that purpose as well. But I think anyone watching would get what they needed to get. Probably. I just feel like this show is relying more and more on its own canon, and it's creating humor, more character-based humor than it would have in the first season because we know these characters, and so we know why things are funny because of these characters.
Right. Like Tendi being so excited to be scanning again, stuff like that.
Right. And the whole resolution with Mariner was you should learn something from your mom. One thing, they don't get too much into her parents on the show, but we do know that somehow they make it work in Starfleet, even though
Right.
they're still married, but they have separate lives. But that was funny when it was good. Like, was she on the thing where they all got turned into crystals? Stuff happens in Starfleet relationships.
Right, like Rutherford's listing the difficulties of relationships in Starfleet, and one of them is that they're always getting transformed into things.
Again, why would you take this job when they don't pay you? Anyway. I don't know. I preferred the Boimler story. I thought, I liked the Jennifer Mariner story. I love the Tillin stuff, but maybe just because it could just simply be that I'm a big fan of Apocalypse Now, and they decided to just cram a whole Apocalypse Now homage into the B story.
With an episode title from a completely different movie.
Right. That has nothing to do with any. It's just, it's like some British rom-com from 2000 or.
No, it's a great movie. There are two of them. And they're great. They're really good. I love those movies. And I'm going to tell you something that might make you want to stop being my friend.
Uh-oh.
I've never seen Apocalypse Now.
Just through the cultural zeitgeist,
Oh, yes.
What you know the lines. The I love smelling napalm. The love smell.
The smell of napalm in the morning. Yep.
If you saw the shot of Brando in the dark, it's just so iconic that you can't help but know what it is, even if you haven't seen the movie. But I very much enjoyed it. Milius was named for the guy who wrote the movie, who won an Oscar for it. But again, this all ties into the Boimler character arc for the season. He's trying to be braver. He's trying to have more confidence, which is tested by Jet, who was totally wrong that Ransom just uses lower ranking officers as human shields. And
Boimler has to learn that his hard work gets noticed.
Yes.
That what he's doing is right.
Yeah. What's the line? It's you weren't expendable, you're reliable.
Yes.
To a dangerous extent or something like that.
That he was reliable, smart, and wiry, which they appreciated. That he over prepares. And maybe too much. And then they said he's good at problem solving and can climb through ducts, which is a big qualification for undercover ops. And then, of course, in this episode, what he does, he makes himself too greasy to catch, which is just a fantastic solution.
See, this, I know I'm going to keep on coming to, but it was funny when, Milius has his acolytes and they've got their pool cues with darts on, and Milius tries to get them to attack Boimler, and then all of them we don't want to do this anymore. Again, because they're not really, they're all play acting. This is all.
No, one of them said, my wife thinks I'm at the buffet.
But this whole area that they're in, it's like the resort is aware that Starfleet people want to just have a place where they can pretend to be crazy. It's almost like Westworld in that, where they're play acting. So they were never really ever in danger. I don't think. But, Milius was testing Boimler because the whole thing about Milius was Starfleet isn't all the cool jobs, which, of course, the Cerritos people are used to.
They're well aware. Yeah.
He has to milk space whales.
The Gormagander or Galaxy's Child thing?
Which is a bit meta, right?
That he knows the title of the episode.
Yeah. I mean, they've done that a few times. Yeah, no, there's no real logic to that at all.
No.
But you didn't even need to know Apocalypse Now because I thought every bit of it was funny and parts of it had nothing to do with Apocalypse Now.
It worked great.
The whole thing, in the bar and the ski slope stuff was just Boimler, pratfalls and hijinks.
And that big scream when he goes off a cliff, which is always a good bonus when you can get Jack Quaid to scream. And I love the lazy river because I love a lazy river. I know the lazy river.
Except it had the ominous looking cave at the end of it.
Right.
And again, it was I didn't even think of it the first time through, but the alien he runs into who has his genitals on his back was kind of an homage to Star Trek VI when Kirk kicks that guy in the knees.
Well, it's like what was the name of the shape? The icosahedron?
Yes.
Was to me a throwback to By Any Other Name when they get thrown into when they get transformed into 12-sided as opposed to 20-sided shapes.
It just looked like it, to anyone who's ever played Dungeons and Dragons or is at least aware of it. It was just a giant 20-sided die is what it was. But I loved how Mariner countered. She goes, "What is the reference?" So no, it was still very cute. And she knew what it was called. Because you'd think
about it.
T'Lyn would be the one to name the shape, but she's the one who nailed it.
Yep.
So, we're just kind of randomly going through this all. But I think that it's doing what the season is doing well, which is this is a great character episode for everyone. Everyone's learning their sitcom lessons all the way through. We're learning more about these characters like T'Lyn. People who don't have arcs are still getting moments. I mean, I thought Ransom was very funny in this episode, and Billups. The whole Billups Ransom
was hilarious because I loved what Billups wanted to be called.
Right, yeah. He wanted the whole backstory of how he's getting a gambling problem for his undercover mission. They're really serving the characters well. I guess because we're watching this season with this overhang of we know it's the final season. So we want everyone to have their moments.
Yeah.
And they knew pretty well early on when they were writing the season, according to Mike, that this was going to be their last. And so that's why, as you say, they crammed so much into these episodes.
Like Phillips wanting to be Gilbert Manhandle. I just thought was great. And then he just stopped responding to the other name. Gilbert Manhandle. They're vacation bros. I do have one question, nitpick weird question. Which is when they jumped in with the vibe tubes, why didn't the musician play them?
Yeah, that's definitely something I thought of on my second
He was in there, and at first I thought, because they threw that net, and then it landed on him, but he didn't have it on him.
But why weren't they rolling around? Why were they staying level while the thing was rolling? I mean, we know the reasons why, because none of this works unless you accommodate for those things. But no, that's an excellent nitpick, and there is no reason. There is no logic to it.
I mean, I could come up with one, which is like that T'Lyn would know the frequency that they need to play it on.
Excellent. See, you got it. You got it in one.
I know. It's one of those things that on a different Star Trek show they would have said it.
So we're starting to get pieces put together for the super arc, which is the space potholes. So the nanites were caused by a tiny ship, an Intrepid class ship like Voyager. And there was a little Voyager joke in there when she said, "I've been through a month of hell."
Yeah.
From a parallel universe that came into this one. They don't have a way to send her back. So we now know, because they went into a parallel universe, this thing came from a parallel. So we know that the space potholes, things are coming in and out of the space potholes. And it's a bigger problem than they realize, perhaps. Any theories? Because at this point, we have facts, but I don't have enough info for theories.
Yeah, I'm just waiting.
Right. Okay. Yeah, me too.
I'm very happy to wait because there's so much fun stuff in there. I mean, I don't have that much more to say about this one except for some more lines. But do you have something else that you want to throw in? I thought this was really fun. Yeah,
it's just a solid, delightful episode. And I don't want to get into what's the best episode, what's the worst episode of the season. We've only got 3. Let's just, I'm not going to rank it. It was good. It was entertaining. It was fun. And, I know when Mike said when you watch a single episode, you should be able to tell what season it is, that I'm starting to get the season 5 vibe, and I like it. And it's a certain way they're balancing things. And it is different than the other seasons, but it's still, at its core, the same show.
Yep, I would agree.
Yeah, I think that's it for the best Exotic Nanite Hotel.
Except that I'm going to start trying to call my husband Snuggle Fluff and see if he likes it.
Some of the cutesy names were a bit
Snuggle
much.
Fluff was my favorite. Yeah. I mean, I could always just call him the Glumpus. But I think he'd prefer Snuggle Fluff.
I bet he wouldn't like either. So
I'll let you know how that goes.
All right. Let's do another episode.
Okay, well, let's move on to episode 4, A Farewell to Farms.
I mean, for the last episode, I was saying you kind of need to know Lower Decks to get it. and you disagreed, and I don't disagree too much with your disagreement, but now this time you've got to agree this is very inside baseball episode.
100%. Yes.
Okay.
I definitely agree with you on this one. They were referencing their own past as well as a million Star Trek things, but definitely like a lot of their history on the show ties into this one. And then just the structure of the episode itself, because it really did feel like a different kind of episode, which they have one of these every season usually.
Yeah, they didn't do a weird episode in season 1, but Wedge Dude was in season 2. And since then, they've kind of done a, you could call it a big swing, but a somewhat differently structured episode each season.
I wouldn't call it a big swing just because I try not to use that expression.
Fair enough.
I call it a departure. And the way they signaled it was with the open.
Certainly. And Wedge Dude is still the best of all of them. I wasn't a big fan of the peanut hamper one in season 3.
I remember,
the perfectly structured redemption or whatever it was, mathematically perfect. Yeah, because it was. I get what they were trying to do, but this is doing what that was trying to do, but better. I think. I enjoyed the episode. I liked the character Mach, who was introduced in Wedge Dude like T'Lyn, right? So. She became a breakout and became a regular, but he's popped in and out. He was a pretty important part of the latter part of the season 4, importantly at the end.
Yeah, very important to Mariner in particular, and then that moved everything forward.
Interesting character. He's kind of the quintessential. Mike has talked about it. He's like he's like the perfect Klingon. He's an ideal Klingon. Very honorable, not randomly violent, but when you need to get violent, he's there to do it.
Right. And so is his brother, apparently.
Yeah, absolutely. The A story with that was good. And then, interestingly, that they gave Miklumo a story.
Yeah. And, their thing, I thought that all the dialogue in it was really funny. Like, I did laugh a lot during those scenes, but I definitely didn't think it was as strong. Like, it was a definite B.
Very B.
It wasn't as strong. The stakes didn't feel high. But it did provide some nice comic relief.
I don't know why Captain Freeman was even in the story. It kind of made sense for Tendi and Rutherford because you kind of need to give them something to do. And then they just threw in the captain like she was helping cooking and stuff like that. And I'm like, why is she there? But don't you have a ship to run or something?
Well, she was there at the beginning welcoming them because I guess it was a big deal that they were there. And then she just got sucked in. Yes. That's the vibe I got, was that she was now invested in this whole thing.
Fair enough.
Because she'd been insulted a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I thought she was kind of out and then she kept on coming back. I'm like, okay, she wants more punishment. Insulting they have fluorescent lights on starships. I would hope, whatever, But let's start with talking about the kind of the big story, which is the Klingon story. I mean, as you said, they changed the opening credits, which gave us I got a very family vibe. I mean, the TNG episode family.
Well, yeah. So at first I was getting a very first Star Wars movie vibe, just like that, feel like the mournful music and looking out and, not wishing there was more. But then the guy's outfit, was a perfect match for Picard's brother. The hat and the overalls and the whole thing. And then the idea that they have this farm, but he doesn't want to be on the farm. He wants to be in space, and the two brothers. So yes.
Yeah. I mean, the bickering brothers, and I'm a brother. I have 3 brothers.
So do I.
I know, but you're not a brother.
No, I'm a sister.
There's a special taking the piss out of each other brothers thing that they really captured well. I think any guy who has brothers can really identify with this episode. So Malor was just a great character. Sam Witwer voiced him. He's a big Star Trek fan. He's done a lot of Star Wars voice stuff. He actually appeared in Enterprise randomly.
Yes, he was in Enterprise. They actually had 3 big Star Trek fan guest stars, which was Mary Chieffo, who has been on Trek but also loved it, Sam Witwer, and Dulce Sloan is a huge Star Trek fan. We almost had her on After Trek at one point.
Mary was great as the kind of flirty Kalara, I mean, we never followed up with her, but one could only assume that she and Mock are gonna, make little Klingons together now that he's a captain again.
Or at least just get it on.
Yeah, exactly. She was a hot to Klingon trot. Like, there was nothing stopping her. She was into it.
She was. And I mean, I was a little torn on that because I love Mary and I thought it was funny, but then I just thought it was a little bit of a weird thing that, we get our female Klingon and that's the only thing that she's thinking about is like how she likes captains. There's something about liking a captain versus wanting to be a captain that's a little retro.
That's true. But we had the Klingon counselor who is a woman in power, and she was very helpful.
It's not like they never had it, but it did feel a little bit. I was a little not thrilled with that, except that she was funny.
Well, I hopefully you weren't offended. I loved the "what crawled up her boob window" line.
Yeah, I was going to mention that as a line I very much enjoyed.
Which obviously a reference to the Duras sisters, and who I always thought like they had a strange boob window, but I wasn't obviously the only person to think that.
No, I think we all thought that.
So, no, I mean there was so much Klingon love in the whole Klingon storyline. There was a lot of the Klingon language, some really obscure stuff, like when the two guys. And one of them goes, experience beige. And the other guy goes, no, you experience beige. And that is just a crazy deep cut into a Star Trek VHS board game from the 90s where Gowron would like come on whenever you failed and say, experience beige, which basically means failure. So
I didn't even catch that or notice it, but that wouldn't be the first time they've referenced that game.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are super fans.
Previous season. What I loved, Klingon stuff for me can sometimes in live action can be a little dull sometimes. But this was great. I loved all the Klingon stuff because they somehow find a way to mock it and respect it at the exact same time.
Right. I mean, they somewhat hang a lantern on it when someone says, you guys have a lot of rituals,
Yeah. No, and Boimler's like so excited with how cool it is as he's just suffering.
Like when they throw him across the floor and he's like, do you think they respect me or something?
Right.
Like that?
He's so excited. Like the whole thing, he's just so excited. So I thought that was, again, because it is, the Klingons can be quite silly. Like pain sticks are silly.
Yeah. If you think when you kind of deconstruct what this all was, it was like a guy just wanted to request to get his job back and a transfer, which in Starfleet would be the matter of filling out some forms. But this is how the Klingons do it, so it really was Klingon bureaucracy at its best. And I mean, it's brutal, but I liked how they were honest about it. Like in the end, he had to kill the guy but yet back to the show itself, like the band playing was like Klingon acid punk, which was a thing that Tendy's into. I haven't analyzed was it the same song she was listening to? I bet it was.
I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, but it's definitely in the zone. And they brought back that guy from episode, was it like the first season? Yes.
I think it was the second episode who was just like the drunk Klingon who they left on the doorstep or whatever. Right? And then he kind of vaguely remembers Boimler, who's thrilled to have just been remembered at all.
Right. He calls him something else, though, but he was glad just to be somewhat remembered.
Yes.
What's interesting about that, and one of the reasons why this episode is differently structured, is it's about Mock and Miglumo, not our characters. None of our characters are kind of the main story in either storyline. It's really about they're really helping other people, not the heroes of the story. But Boimler, his thing is interestingly picking up on last episode because they mentioned he was terrified of skiing, but he's his whole season is dealing with becoming braver and more aggressive, I guess. And
he's been very influenced by his double.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't heard about the pad yet. Like there was a brief mention of it in episode 2, but I thought we'd be seeing him like checking in on the pad, to get more tips. But he's definitely influenced by that guy for sure.
Yeah, and it made him see potential within himself. So he was scared of skiing, but he already learned from it.
And so he says he's growing a beard. Which Mariner says, "Oh, is that what we're calling it?" or something like that.
Yeah.
But this is kind of an interesting thing in that if you look back at the trailers for the season and you look at the episodes, they actually edited out Boimler's whiskers and how they grew through the season so far. And you brought that up with Mike McMahan in New York.
Yeah. Well, why don't we listen to what he said about it, and then I will talk about what he did to follow up on that. So Boimler is growing facial hair throughout the season. So is he literally growing the beard? And why was it all removed from the trailer?
I'm surprised you know that he's growing a little facial hair. We don't like to put everything in the trailer. You know what I mean? We like to have there be a surprise where people are showing up and seeing it week to week. I don't know if he's technically growing the beard. Everybody kind of grew the beard a little bit, so to speak, end of last season, because they had all been promoted and they were all doing new stuff. This season is really about, now that we've been promoted, now that we're not worried about getting fired all the time, who do we want to be? Like, what paths are we going to pick? And who are we? Are we defined by work, or are we defining the work? And it's kind of a sharpening of what you saw in season 4.
So what's interesting is that after the interviews were done, Mike came back into the interview room and headed right to our table and said, "I need to ask you guys a favor. Can you," and this was, it was just premiering the first 2 episodes. He said, "Can you not include that stuff? Because I really love the joke of his beard growing over the season, and I really want people to be surprised when they see it, because it's so fun. I just don't want to ruin it for fans." And again, even on stage at the panel later, he stopped Jack Quaid from bringing it up, and Jack just said, "Oh, it's my favorite running gag of the whole season." But it was important enough to him that he thought about it, came running back, and truly just because he was thinking of fans, which is nice.
No, I get it. I don't know what he meant by, I don't know if he's technically growing the beard. I don't know if he means that metaphorically or literally. I think
he does. I think he means it, the way like Riker grew the beard. And,
right.
I feel like there's so many things when you talk about growing the beard in Star Trek.
Because the reason why, you brought this up after he said, "I think we're growing the beard this season," even though then he kind of says, "Well, we kind of grew it last year." It's, this show's been growing the beard since season 2, I think, really.
Yeah, I agree.
But now Brad is literally growing the beard.
So, yes, he is.
So this is a good episode for Boimler. No one else really has any character stuff going on, except I guess you could just say Mariner's sneaky. She's doing her job. She's getting her scans, and she's coming up with creative ways. Did she make up the story about, dropping off a skull at the Museum of Bones?
Well, she said it wasn't just to do that. But I thought, one that she helped him also because he helped her, although she did have an agenda. But I did think the other character growth moment, which was very quick, was Captain Freeman, who tells Dr. Maglimo to take over before she says something undiplomatic. And I think back in the day, she would have her temper used to be nuts.
That's true. And those people, which is why I was surprised she kept on coming back, because those two were insufferable. She did step in, thankfully, when one of them hit Dr. Miglimo.
Yep.
But she's kind of, what I don't get is they arrested Dr. Miglimo and they kind of went along with the whole, he's going to go to food prison. Was it Flavor Prison? What was that?
I can't remember. I must have been Flavor Prison. With the amuse-bouche to welcome you.
Right. If you are I'm not a foodie, but I'm enough, I'm foodie aware enough to know there was a lot of foodie culture they were making fun of in this episode, for sure. There's a lot of foodie terminology, and of course, the true critics. But why would they were kind of on the cusp of handing Miglimo over. I guess it was his choice, because for whatever reason, he loved these two and he was willing to go to food prison for them.
Right.
But his whole family was going to be, sent away just because these two jerks.
They were going to have no more reserved seating or something.
Yeah, they were removed from the seating chart or whatever,
Yes.
I mean, we learned quite a lot about, we never knew the name of his species because we've seen avians in Star Trek, but he wasn't either, any of those. They're a whole new thing. We got to visit their home planet. For some reason, they have a giant office building that looks like a bird cage. Why would they do that? But no, I thought it was fun. We've got, this is kind of like the Billups episode where he's got the weird, fantasy family.
Right, and he's kind of rejecting his, whereas McLeemo is embracing this part of his culture.
Absolutely. He's a chef of the mind. He does not want to give up. Yeah. We learned, I think it was, did the food stuff start before the episode where they go to Ferenginar and he's in the restaurant kind of obsessing over food?
Yeah.
That was really where we learned a lot about how he's obsessed with food. But I don't know if it came before that as well.
I forgot about that. But yeah, that's his thing. But then their thing with the tasting the tiny little portions was very funny. And I also thought, that dish, the big finale dish that they made, reminded me a lot of the three-eyed fish on The Simpsons.
Right. The hogfish, which I think had quite a few eyes.
Yeah.
It looked disgusting.
Just like the three-eyed fish on The Simpsons. And we also learned in that story, we did learn something about Tendi, which is that she's really great at dicing.
Assassin training. And she called back to when she made Miglimo fight the giant Orion last season. Yeah, so there was lots of that little stuff. And again, that's kind of only funny if you know that. If you can remember that scene. And that's fine. It's season 5. It's their last season. They should do that kind of stuff. I have no
of course
problem
they
with
should.
That.
And honestly, it goes by so fast that if you miss it, like I always missed something in there, there's so much to keep you going. It never creates a dead moment because they've already moved on to the next thing.
Right. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about it. Are we ready? Should we wrap up? Is there more to?
Well, I have a couple of great lines that I just have to mention.
Okay.
Besides the boob window, I did love the edict of unreturned favors, and where they get fed to a bear otherwise, and then he says, "It's better you train to fight the bear." That was really good. And I liked one of the critics saying, "Guard, catch me as I performatively faint."
I thought Malor had some of the best lines, like when one of the guy goes, "Malor can barely pass wind," and he goes, "I pass wind," And when Mock is trying to talk to Kalara and he goes, "The whole family was shamed. It was hilarious." That's such a brother thing to say,
Even just the very beginning, like, "Why is a human calling you?" "I don't care." So all that stuff was so good. "How's my plumage?" "Downy." There were great little back and forth things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now that we're at episode 4, one thing I've noticed is there's been no Dr. Tana this season. Like, I don't think she's had a single line, even though Jillian is still in the main credits. I wonder, like, we see Dr. Tana. We saw 2 Dr. Tanas.
Yes.
Because Shax has had a couple lines here and there, but not her. It's weird.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because
I know she's one of your faves.
She's one of my faves. We had that whole episode where she wanted the box, but I'd like to learn more about her because there's got to be more there.
Yeah. I think that's it. It was they did try to tie the 2 stories together at the very end where Boimler sees the 2-star review, but it didn't feel like that. Just felt like a bit of a throwaway.
Well, we haven't talked about what happened next, and this is kind of the important thing, which is the biggest reveal happened very quickly, which was they were there the whole time to get scans for another one of these space potholes, this rifts in space, and they figured out that they are someone's making them. They're artificial. Right.
I actually very much appreciate the way, and they did this last season too in a very good way. The season story doesn't take over. It doesn't drive everything. You just get a tiny taste of it each time.
I thought the season story I think it's even better this season where it's a very light touch. Very light touch.
Yep.
They made a much bigger deal out of the disappearance of the ships last season. I thought it was actually too much in the early episodes, but we don't know what's going to be in the last half of it, but I suspect it'll ramp up quite a bit, probably by the end.
And I still feel like there's more that's important about their first encounter with their doubles.
I think these holes in space there's a couple of angles to them. One is, it's the big arc and there's some big bad behind it or something. But Mike has hinted that it allowed for them to do some things on the show to bring some characters in. So I think we're going to see some interesting cameos, some legacy characters pop in. And again, we haven't seen the back half of the season, so this is guesswork here. Yeah. But I think these fissures are going to let them maybe bring in some Enterprise people, which I know he's wanted to do.
Who do you think he's going to bring from Enterprise? Who would you put your money on?
It's probably Connor, I would think. I think they're going to bring in Connor. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's going to be alive, obviously.
Yeah.
From another universe. Maybe someone else. I don't know. But it could be anyone from anywhere. Maybe they'll do something from Discovery. Who knows?
They could.
Get crazy.
Yeah. They could take anyone from anywhere.
Exactly.
The only other thing I want to mention is that I thought the visuals were very striking and beautiful. Especially so in this episode, the red sky at the beginning when they were on the farm, the council chamber, the way all the food looked, like all that stuff I thought looked really, really beautiful.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work, actually. Because animated shows, you don't think about this, but so much of this episode was off the ship and on the Klingon planet. And, that there's a lot of work that goes into all of that stuff that they had to create. And there was a lot of new characters as well.
That's why I wanted to call it out, because it is still gorgeous, and that's a really nice bonus.
And then on top of that, they made a whole new, credit sequence.
Yeah.
So there a lot of effort went into this episode for sure. So that's it. We've done 4 episodes. We'll be back to hit the halfway point next week.
See you then.